There was a particular pitch a sentence took on when it came through a wall. You could be upstairs with a comic and know from 4 rooms away that something had been left open or dropped or asked for once too often. The words arrived second, the shape of them arrived first, and it was usually enough. Every house in the country ran on about 50 stock sentences of this kind. Nobody wrote them down and nobody had to learn them. They were simply in the air of the place, the way coal smoke was, and they have gone the same way. 50 of them then. What each one meant, who said it, what it told you about the person saying it, and where it came from in the cases where anybody actually knows. Some of these are documented down to the year. Most are not. And when we reach those, I will say so, rather than make something up. Number 1. Were you born in a barn? The door was the flashpoint. Every house had one that got left open, and every house had somebody who noticed inside about 4 seconds. It was about money. Heat cost coal, and later it cost gas, and a house with one warm room could be emptied through a hallway door on the latch. Manners were the polite way of saying so. The earliest printed example anybody has found is American in a Cleveland paper of 1876, and it is about a man keeping his hat on indoors rather than a door at all. The version that is properly ours is the other one. Were you born in a field with the gates open? If that is the one your mother used, you have just put yourself on a map. Leave the same door open long enough and you got the other complaint entirely. Number 2. Like Piccadilly Circus in here. Traffic was the offence. People coming through, people going back for something they had forgotten, and one woman in the middle of it trying to get a tea on. She reached for the busiest place in Britain, and most of the women who used it had never stood in it. It came through newsreels and postcards, which is exactly why it worked. Everybody could see it without going. The statue there had been taken away for the war, and it came back on the 29th of June, 1947, to several thousand people standing in heavy rain to watch it go up. A woman saying this in 1958 was reaching for a place that had gone dark and come back inside her own lifetime. Circus, incidentally, means a round junction. Nothing to do with tents. The traffic she could live with. What you wore while causing it, she could not. Number 3. You'll catch your death. Wet hair was the worst of it. Wet hair, bare legs in October, a coat carried rather than worn. The threat went straight to the end of the road and took the definite article with it. Your death. Underneath it was a woman with no other way of saying she was frightened for you, so she said it in the only register she had. The theory was wrong because colds come from viruses rather than drafts. The odd part is that while British mothers were saying this, the government were running a place near Salisbury that paid volunteers to catch colds deliberately. The Medical Research Council's Common Cold Unit opened in 1946 and stayed open until 1990. Nobody in your house had heard of it. The theory came down from your grandmother and needed no testing. The same instinct produced a warning that made no sense at all. Number 4. You'll have someone's eye out. Sticks did it. So did umbrellas, knitting needles, and anything whatsoever on the 5th of November. Of all the injuries available, one got chosen every single time because it is the part of a child that cannot be mended. It stood in for every other disaster at once. There is no record of where this came from. None. No entry in Green's Dictionary of Slang. No date anywhere. It probably never got written down because it is a warning rather than a saying, and warnings do not get collected into proverb books. So take it as it was. A woman who could not name what was dangerous, naming the worst thing she could think of instead. When the warnings ran out, the reasons went with them. Number 5. Because I said so. 3 wives was the limit in most houses, 4 in a generous one. The sentence that closed it reclassified the question. You had stopped asking and started arguing, and arguing was a separate offense. It answered nothing, and every child worked that out inside a second. It is an honest sentence in its way. It says out loud that reasons were something adults gave each other and instructions were what children got. Nobody pretended otherwise. There is no first use for this one. Every search turns up parenting columns arguing about whether you ought to say it, and not one of them can tell you when anybody first did. Some mothers refused to finish it that way and reached for logic instead. Number 6. If everyone jumped off a cliff, all the others are allowed. That was the opening move, and it was usually true, which is what made it hard to beat. The answer is the only properly logical thing in this entire list. It takes the argument seriously, finds the flaw, and demolishes it. And a child who got told, it remembers it 40 years on. It also missed the point completely. The child had never wanted to follow the crowd. The child wanted to not be the only one left out, and neither of them ever said so. No dictionary carries a date for it. Some houses used a bridge, and there is no evidence for which came first. Ask that same woman how she was keeping, and you got 4 words back. Mustn't grumble. Hold on to those. We come back to them. Number 7. Wait till your father gets home. Deferral was the trick. The punishment got booked in rather than delivered, and the waiting did the work across a whole afternoon. It also drew you a map of the house. She was there all day and dealt with everything, but the serious sanction belonged to a man who was out. Read it one way, and she was borrowing power she had not got. Read it another, and she had just decided not to hit you. One warning: an American cartoon took its title from this in 1972, which some people now treat as the source. The cartoon was named after the phrase. British mothers had been using it for decades already. When it did not get deferred, it got answered on the spot. Number 8. Something to cry about. Tears were the offense being punished, and everybody in the room knew the logic was circular. That was the whole point of it. It said that your distress was not admissible evidence. You could have it, but you could not enter it into the argument, and if you insisted on entering it, you would be given a proper reason for it. Nobody has dated this. It is not documented as Victorian, whatever you may read, and it is not particularly British either. American parents used it just as hard. One sentence is all it needs. There was a sharper one behind it. Number 9. I'll swing for you. Hanging is what this means, and almost nobody under 50 hears it anymore. Swing has meant to be hanged in English since at least 1589, and the threat form is recorded in the Annual Register of 1837. It says, in 6 words, I would kill you and take the rope for it. Nothing to do with throwing a punch, whatever the modern ear does with it, which is why the date matters. Britain's last executions were on the morning of the 13th of August, 1964. Gwyn Evans at Strangeways in Manchester and Peter Allen at Walton in Liverpool at 8 o'clock at the same moment. A woman saying this in Liverpool in 1963 was reaching for a rope in working order 8 miles away. Saying it in 1975, she was quoting something dead. In the right tone, it was almost affectionate. In the wrong one, you left the room. Number 10. There are children starving. The plate was the battleground, and the argument was fought at a distance of 4,000 miles. Nobody could send it, and every child said so, and the retort is as much a part of this tradition as the original line. The place name is the interesting bit, because it moved with the news. A mother saying Biafra is speaking between 1968 and 1970, and essentially no later. Ethiopia puts her from late 1984. Africa and India are the undated defaults either side. Underneath it was rationing rather than geography. British food rationing ran 14 years and ended on the 4th of July, 1954, meat and bacon last. She had spent her adult life with a book of coupons in her handbag. Refusing to eat it was one thing. Announcing you were going out was another. Number 11. Don't come running to me. Sympathy got withdrawn in advance, formally, in writing, as it were. She never meant it. The function was to let you go ahead and do the thing while moving the responsibility for it onto you. And both of you knew the sympathy would be there when you came back with a knee opened up. There is no origin for this. It is a sentence that turned into a formula through sheer repetition, and any website offering you a derivation has invented one. Come back too often or too late, and you got the last of them. Number 12. I'm not running a hotel. Meals at odd hours did it. So did coming in at midnight, eating, and going straight back out. The inconvenience was the smallest part of it. What stung was the implication, which was that the house had turned into infrastructure and she had turned into staff. You cannot say this to a 7-year-old. It only works on somebody old enough to have started treating home as a service. There is a small British joke buried in it as well. Hotels were what other people could afford. That was the indoor weather. The outdoor sort had a language all of its own. Number 13. Black over Bill's mother's. Cloud building on the horizon, seen from a back step by somebody with washing out. Now, everybody who says this is certain it belongs to their part of the country, and the record does something awkward to that. The oldest recorded form is wills, not bills, and the printed trail runs Buckinghamshire in 1927, Notes and Queries in 1930, Suffolk in 1931, Portsmouth in 1952, and Bedfordshire in 1958. The Midlands claim, which is the one everybody makes, first shows up in print in 1977. Kaiser Bill had nothing to do with it. The oldest form is will. The Kaiser was always Bill, and the Suffolk citation has people pointing west while Germany sits east. Shakespeare's mother is no better. Nobody knows who Bill was, and nobody ever has. Whoever she was, she got the rain first. Number 14. Mustn't grumble. How are you keeping? That was the question, and this was the answer, and the answer told you nothing whatsoever about how she was keeping. That is the genius of it. It declines to report. Things were not especially good, and listing them would have been an imposition on you. So instead, she performed the refusal to complain and let the refusal do the complaining. A grumble smuggled inside a statement that there would be no grumbling. You will not find a date for it. No dictionary carries a first use, and anybody who tells you it came out of the Blitz is guessing. What can be said is that it belonged to respectable working people and to the lower middle class, and that it was audibly older than whoever you heard it from. Keep it in your ear. It has further to go. Number 15. It's a bit close. Air that would not move in a room that had been shut all day. The interesting part is how often it described a parlour rather than a sky. In 1970, about a quarter of British homes had central heating, and the average house in winter sat at something like 54 degrees Fahrenheit inside. That figure comes from the government's own housing energy file. A house like that tracks the outside air almost exactly, so the weather was in the room with you, and close covered both. It also let you ask for a window to be opened without asking. Cold was the commoner problem, and it had a yardstick. Number 16. Nice weather for ducks. Rain that had settled in for the day remarked upon at a bus stop to a stranger. This is one of the old ones and properly documented. It is in print in 1811 in a London play as fine weather for the ducks. Dickens has it in the Old Curiosity Shop in 1840 and again in Household Words in 1855. The nice version appears in 1841. What it did was hand a stranger a conversation. You were both getting wet, neither of you could do anything about it, and the joke cost nothing and was at nobody's expense. 2 centuries, and it still needs no explaining. Number 17. We'll pay for this. Sunshine was the trigger, which is what makes it such a strange sentence. Good fortune had to be balanced. Enjoying it out loud invited a correction, and predicting the correction was a way of preventing it, or at least of not being caught out by it. It is superstition, and it is also insurance against disappointment. There is no attestation for this at all, and no origin story circulating either, so I will not attach it to a heat wave or to anything else. It is simply how we talked about good weather, and possibly how we still do. Bad weather did not need predicting. You could see it on the line. Number 18. The washing froze on the line. Sheets that came in like boards and had to be stood against a wall to thaw. This one is a report rather than a saying used as a measurement by somebody establishing that they knew what cold actually was. And the practice behind it is documented in the oral histories. The copper lit before breakfast, 6 buckets of cold water to fill it, the dolly and the washboard, the mangle, the whites rinsed at the end in blue water from a blue bag. They put the whites out in a frost on purpose. They reckoned it kept them white. Whether it did is another matter, and the record only tells us they believed it. There was no drying anything indoors at 54 degrees anyway, which brings us to what everything cost. Number 19. Spend a penny. Lavatories had locks on them, and the locks took a coin. Here is where the usual story goes. Wrong. You will have been told it was coined at the Great Exhibition of 1851, where George Jennings put his conveniences in, and well over 800,000 people paid a penny each, getting a clean seat, a towel, a comb, and a shoe shine for it. The charge is documented. The phrase is not recorded until 1935. That gap of 85 years means we were naming a machine our own generation grew up with, rather than an exhibition none of us saw. The reason it was overwhelmingly a woman's phrase is written into law. Section 87 of the Public Health Act, 1936, let councils charge for public conveniences, in the Act's own words, other than urinals. Men's urinals were free by statute, and that exemption stood for 72 years. There is a small item in the Fraserburgh Herald of the 20th of May, 1947, about a young lady who put half a crown in the slot by mistake. 30 pence for a penny job, with no way of getting it back. Everything else cost something too, and that was where the trouble started. Number 20. I'm not made of money. Asking was the mistake. You knew it before the sentence finished. Notice the grammar. I cannot, rather than I will not. That distinction closed the conversation, because there is nothing to argue with in a fact. In a great many British households, it was simply true, and the child knew it, and that is where the sting came from. You had been shown the edges of the household, and you should have known where they were. She had been managing a ration book within living memory. 14 years of them, ending in 1954, with a ceremony in Trafalgar Square where a minister burned one to mark it. No date exists for the phrase itself. It has no first use anywhere. If you pushed it, you got the lecture rather than the refusal. Number 21. Money doesn't grow on trees. Economics arrived at this point, delivered to somebody aged 9 in a shop doorway. It was a no with an economics lesson bolted on. And it did something rather unfair, which was to hand the household's finances to a child as a problem for them to feel bad about. It is old, and it is well recorded, though the first printing anybody has found is American, in the Connecticut Courant of the 6th of July, 1819, signed by somebody calling himself Giles Jolter Jr. It is almost certainly older than that in speech, on both sides of the water. Do not let anyone tell you we invented it. Prices, of course, had opinions of their own. Number 22. That's a bit steep. Price tags did this. So did a garage bill, or a man asking for £4 to do half a day. It is an assessment rather than a refusal, which is the useful thing about it. It leaves the door open. You can call something steep and buy it anyway, having established for the record that you knew what it ought to have cost. That is a competence claim as much as a complaint. Now, this one is not British. Steep in this sense is American slang, first found in a New York magazine in 1856, and it reaches us by 1892 in Mr. Punch's Model Music Hall. By the 50s, it had been ours for 2 generations, so your grandmother was not borrowing anything, but she was speaking American. Against all that spending sat the other habit entirely. Number 23. Saving for a rainy day. Money put by, in a tin, in a drawer, against something that had not happened yet. Look at the direction of it. Money put aside against something, taking for granted that a reversal is coming, and that nobody will catch you when it does. In a house with no float and no safety net, that was accurate rather than gloomy. It is a very old English proverb, and it sits in the dictionaries of proverbs, though the 16th century date usually attached to it I could not confirm, so I will simply say it is centuries deep and leave the year alone. The rule underneath it was shorter. Number 24. Look after the pennies. Thrift as arithmetic, taught to a child at the counter of a post office. And the pounds will look after themselves. That is the second half, and it was usually left off because everybody could finish it. Small economies do compound, that part is true, but the sentence is claiming something further, which is that the person who watches the pennies is a better person and not merely a richer one. This one has a name attached, which is rare here. The older wording is "take care of the pence," and it is credited to William Lowndes, who was Secretary to the Treasury. Lord Chesterfield quotes him and credits him in a letter to his son dated the 5th of February, 1750. Whether Lowndes ever wrote it down himself, nobody knows. Say it is attributed to him and you are safe. Watching the pennies was one way to live. There was another, and it came to the door. Number 25. On the Never Never. Hire purchase, and the name is the joke. You never, never finish paying. It also meant a man. In the 50s, the Never Never was the agent himself, the one who called weekly to collect. A novel of 1951 has a woman opening her door and saying, "I thought you was the Never Never. Come in, stranger." It reaches Britain in print by 1926 in an Edgar Wallace book, £80 down and more than you can afford for the rest of your life. Its perfect moment comes in Alan Sillitoe's Saturday Night and Sunday Morning in 1958, where television aerials are described as installed on the Never Never. That is the whole social history in one line. The aerial on the roof told the entire street that the set underneath it had not been paid for yet. Credit at the shop worked differently, and it had a book. Number 26, Paying on Tick. The book lived under the counter, and your name was in it, and so was everybody else's. Tick comes from ticket, meaning a written acknowledgement of a debt, and that is not a folk explanation. It is the actual etymology as given by Greens. It has been in English since 1609. Dryden uses it in 1668. The tick book is harder to describe kindly. It kept families fed between Thursday and Friday. It also meant the man behind the counter knew precisely how your household was doing, week by week, in his own handwriting. Being on tick was ordinary. Being refused was a catastrophe in front of whoever else was in the shop. The pub had its own version, and it was older. Number 27. Put it on the slate. Behind the bar there was a physical object, and that is the part people miss. A real one, on the wall, with your name chalked on it. The publican chalked what you owed on a real slate behind the bar. And it is in print, in that sense, from 1859, with a nice line from 1884 about a poetical publican who keeps what is vulgarly known as a slate. It moved into shops later, so if your memory of it is a grocer's, that is a genuine 20th century use of an older pub word. You could not ask a stranger to put it on the slate. The phrase assumes a relationship, and it assumes the other man will still be there next week, and so will you. Some households refused all of it and dealt with money a third way. Number 28. It'll see me out. Said of a coat, a boiler, a car, a pair of shoes, usually to a younger relative who had suggested replacing one. 3 things happen at once, in 5 words. Thrift is a virtue. Your own death is a scheduling matter, and this conversation is now over. Thank you. It has no history because it is ordinary English rather than idiom. See out, meaning to last until the end of, the same one as in see out the winter. Nothing to do with funerals. There is nothing in this list more devastating, and it was said cheerfully, usually while doing something else. What she thought of other people was not said cheerfully at all. Number 29. All fur coat and no knickers. Show without substance. That is the meaning, and it was aimed at cities as often as at people. Edinburgh got it hardest, and Newcastle got it too. Used of a place, it is almost affectionate, saying the frontage is grander than whatever is going on behind it. 2 corrections, because this is misreported everywhere. The first printed example anybody has located is Southern English in the Daily Herald of the 4th of March 1963, about Ilford. The Scottish and Tyneside citations all come afterwards. Second, the original word was drawers, with knickers only turning up in print in the early 70s. Both findings come from newspaper archive research rather than a dictionary, so take them as reported. The Midlands had its own, older and sharper. Kippers and curtains. Expensive curtains at the window and cheap fish on the plate in a Birmingham paper in 1934. Aimed at a woman rather than a town, these got a good deal less affectionate. Number 30. Mutton dressed as lamb. An older woman in clothes cut for a younger one, and the verdict passed on her before she had reached the end of the road. It is older than people assume. Regency, in fact, and not Victorian at all. There is a version in a novel of 1810, and the line everybody quotes is in a diary of 1811, recording the Prince of Wales saying he did not like lamb, but mutton dressed like lamb. The cruelty is precise. It only works if you know how old she actually is, which makes it a phrase of the small community, unusable by a stranger and always available to a neighbor. Say it plainly. This was used to wound, and it was aimed at women by women, and the women it was aimed at are watching this. The next one, wounded without saying anything at all. Number 31. No better than she ought to be. A reputation taken apart without a single word you could repeat in court. That is the craft of it. It says nothing and accuses nobody of anything specific, leaving the listener to supply the whole of it. It performs respectability at the same moment it destroys somebody else's, because the speaker is too refined to say the thing outright. It is properly old. Henry Fielding has it in a play of 1730, in the form no better than she should be. The ought version is the later spoken one, and nobody has dated it. Not Shakespeare, whatever you have heard, and not Victorian either. Occasionally it went the other way, at a man, and it never had the same force. Younger targets got a different word. Number 32. A right madam. A girl, usually, often a daughter, and often said by her own mother, with something underneath it that was not entirely disapproval. The sense goes back a long way. Madam, meaning a woman of pretension, said with a curl on it, is dated to the 1590s. The word started as straightforward respect and soured within a couple of centuries, which is an ordinary thing for a word to do. One thing to be clear about, because sources muddle it constantly. This has nothing whatever to do with the later meaning of madam that arrived in the 1870s. Different sense, different century. A right madam meant a girl who had ideas about herself. Ideas about yourself were the cardinal offense, and there were several ways to say so. Number 33. She thinks she's it. Never specified and never needing to be. The last word of that sentence did all the work and carried no content whatsoever. The offense is getting above yourself, which in a street where everybody earned roughly the same was the one unforgivable thing. The sentence is more revealing about the speaker than the target, because it is a claim to be the one without ideas. There is no attestation for it, and there never will be. If your family said she's the bee's knees instead, that is American from 1914 out of a craze for comparing things to absurd animal parts. The genteel version of the same accusation had 2 words and a lot more edge. Number 34. Airs and graces. Manners borrowed from a class above your own and performed slightly too carefully. This is the purest class phrase in the whole 50. It has no meaning outside a society with fixed and legible ranks, and notice which direction it fires. It polices the boundary from below, aimed at the person who tried to cross rather than at the class being crossed into. Thackeray has it in Vanity Fair in 1948 about Becky Sharp, which is almost too neat, since she is the most famous class climber in English fiction. Every one of these 6 cut 2 ways, and the second way is where it gets interesting. Number 35. Too big for his boots. Promotion did it. Or acting promoted, which was worse, because at least a promotion was official. Listen to who says it. This one travels sideways, between people on the same level, almost never downward from a foreman. It is for the man who got the supervisor's job and started walking differently on a Monday. Both forms are documented. Breeches came first, and it is American, from Davy Crockett in 1835, writing about Andrew Jackson. Boots turns up in a Scottish novelist's book in Blackwood's Edinburgh magazine in 1868, and whether the Boots version started here or over there, nobody can say, so I will not claim it for us. The next one is claimed for the North, and the North does not have it. Number 36. All mouth and no trousers. Talk without delivery. Everybody agrees on the meaning. Nobody agrees on the words. The version in print first has no negative at all. All mouth and trousers. It is there in a novel of 1961 and in the Birmingham Post in January 1967. The one with the no waits until Keith Waterhouse used it in his Daily Mirror column on the 18th of July 1974. So the form half the country insists is wrong is the one the record supports, and both Michael Quinion and Jonathan Green take that view. The negative got added later by people applying logic to a phrase never meant to have any. 2 things follow. It is probably not Northern, whatever Last of the Summer Wine did for it, since the citations point at Birmingham. And if your dad said it without the no, he was right all along. Talking too much had its own verdict, and it was gentler. Number 37. Talk the hind legs off a donkey. Relentless, unstoppable, cheerful conversation, usually admired while being complained about. It is much older than it sounds, and it started with a horse. William Cobbett wrote about talking a horse's hind leg off in January 1808 and called it, even then, an old vulgar hyperbole. He came back to it in 1816 with a good line: though a man may talk a horse's hind leg off, he cannot talk it on again. The donkey arrives in the 1840s, and here is the part nobody expects. Both of the early donkey citations are about politicians. The Leeds Times used it about Parliament in 1854. It was a phrase for windbag members, long before it was a phrase for your auntie. Some talkers were not admired. They were feared. Number 38. She's got a tongue on her. A warning to a stranger and a compliment at the same time, depending entirely on who was saying it. This is not straightforwardly an insult, which is why it belongs here. In a community where women held very little formal power, a sharp tongue was real power, and this sentence acknowledges it. You did not cross her. Everybody knew you did not cross her. There was respect in that, and sometimes a little fear. Nothing is documented. No date, no origin, and I would not trust anyone who offers you one. If she turned it on you, your face gave you away. Number 39. A face like a wet weekend, sulking visibly and refusing to be asked about it. This is the kindest thing in the whole list. It is mock exasperation rather than judgment, and it assumes a shared reference that everybody had, which is a British seaside holiday in the rain. Some families added a town, a wet weekend in Rill or Bognor or Morecambe, and which town you used depended on where you went. I can find nothing for it before the year 2000. That does not make it new, because a phrase like this lives in kitchens for decades before anybody prints it. But it does mean nobody should be telling you it is Victorian. Not everything got said to your face. Some of it was said past you. Number 40. Hark at her. An aside delivered to a third person about somebody standing 4 feet away. Hark on its own has been dead in English for about a century, surviving in this one exclamation and in hark back. Longman and the Oxford Advanced Learners both carry it, and neither can date it. What it does is invite an audience. It says, without saying it, that the woman being discussed has got above herself and turns the room into a jury. Rarely cruel, and usually done with the eyebrows. The women who could do all of this in 6 words had one more move in them. Ask any one of them how she was keeping on a bad week in a hard year, and she would tell you she mustn't grumble and mean it as the end of the subject. That is, if she said it that way at all. 2 counties over, they did not. Number 41. Put wood in thole. Shut the door, rendered as though you had never seen a door before, which is the entire joke. Now, honesty. There is no attestation for this anywhere. None in Green's, nothing in the Internet Archive, and every site that explains it has no citation at all. Yorkshire claims it, Lancashire claims it, and so do the Potteries and the Black Country, all at once. What is documented is the machinery underneath. Dropping the definite article to a T or a glottal stop is a well-recorded Yorkshire feature, and Hoyle for Hole is properly West Riding. The Survey of English Dialects went round 313 places between 1950 and 1961, recording exactly this, and more than 30 of those Yorkshire recordings sit in the British Library Sound Archive. So the phrase belongs to the north. Which part? Nobody can prove, and I would not take sides. Surprise had a regional shape too. Number 42. The foot of our stairs. Astonishment so complete that the speaker announced they were going to sit down. Well, I'll go to the foot of our stairs. It is a minced oath, effectively. A respectable working alternative to swearing, and it worked because it was daft. Everybody attributes it to Hilda Baker. Her documented catchphrases are different ones, she knows. You know, being the famous one, and this is not among them. Wilfred Pickles gets credited too, and his were "How do?" "How are ya?" and "Are you courting?" Neither claim holds up. What is documented is that it is in print by 1939 in a short story with a Birmingham setting, said by a barman. After that, it appears steadily until a newspaper puts it in Ina Sharples' mouth in 1979 and adds, whatever that means, Northern then and Midlands. Beyond that, nobody's. Telling somebody to stop was a Northern speciality as well. Number 43, give over, stop it. Or, said in the other tone entirely, get away with you, I don't believe a word. The tone decided everything, and the same two words did both jobs. It could shut a room up, and it could accept a compliment. This is the best documented thing in the whole regional stretch. Green's labels it British and mainly Northern, and the chain is unbroken from 1797 through a flash dictionary of 1848 that lists it alongside Cheese It and Stow It, and onto a line in the Kendal Mercury in 1852. If you doesn't give hover, I'll get my mother to mill your napper. 220 years, and it has not shifted. Greeting somebody was where the map really showed. Number 44, eye up me duck, hello, or look out. The same two words, the same delivery, and you knew from the situation which one you had got. Duck is the East Midlands and the Potteries, said to anybody of any age or sex. Cross into Scotland, and it is hen, though not in Aberdeen and the North East, where it is quine and loon. Tyneside says hinny, Norfolk says boar. Birmingham and the Black Country both say bab, and both will fight you for it. Liverpool, Birmingham and the Black Country all say our kid, and Manchester does not, whatever you have heard. You will read that eye up comes from Old Norse, and that duck comes from an Anglo-Saxon word for duke. Neither has a shred of dictionary support. Duck as an endearment is recorded from the 1580s, and it means the bird. 3 sentences were the same in every house in the country, because they did not come off any street. Number 45, make do and mend. Repair it, alter it, turn the collar, and get another winter out of it. This is the only sentence in the 50 with a government file behind it. A Board of Trade campaign launched in the autumn of 1942 with the Women's Institute, with the pamphlet following a year later. 32 pages, 29 line drawings, prepared for the board by the Ministry of Information and published by His Majesty's Stationery Office in 1943, 3 pence. The foreword is signed by the President of the Board of Trade and opens by thanking the reader for the way she has accepted clothes rationing. Inside are instructions for remodeling men's clothes into women's. They gave it a character, Mrs. So-and-so, a rag doll in a pinny made by an agency called W.S. Crawford and described in the trade press in April 1944 as a pleasant figure, rather like a ventriloquist's dummy. Here is the part most people have wrong. Clothes rationing did not end with the war. Harold Wilson stood up in the Commons on the 14th of March 1949 and said he had that day signed an order ending it completely, and that from tomorrow morning coupons would no longer be required, 4 years after it was all supposed to be over, which is how a wartime slogan became a household religion and stayed one long after it needed to be. Number 46, waste not, want not. 4 words, and half the country now mishears the second half of them. Want here means lack. It does not mean desire. Waste nothing and you will not go short. And once you know that, the sentence stops being a piece of nagging and turns into a piece of arithmetic. It goes back to the 1770s and it displaced an older and better one. Willful waste makes woeful want, which was in circulation by 1576. The war borrowed it rather than coining it, whatever the posters suggest, and it is not biblical and not Benjamin Franklin's, though both get claimed constantly. Where things lived was governed by the third rule, number 47, a place for everything, said while putting something back, and usually while looking directly at you, and everything in its place. That is the rest of it. In a small house with no storage, this was logistics. A terrace with 3 rooms downstairs and no cupboards worth the name only functions if every object has a home, and disorder in a house like that is a genuine loss of capacity. The attributions are where it gets entertaining, because every famous name attached to it is wrong. Benjamin Franklin gets the credit constantly, and nobody can produce the text. Mrs. Beeton came decades too late. Samuel Smiles was quoting something already in circulation. The oldest printing anybody has found is a religious tract of 1999 about a girl called Lucy who had contrived a place for everything and put everything in its place. No author, no origin, nothing but a proverb somebody was already living by. 3 household laws then. The last 3 were said on the way out of the room. Number 48. Sleep tight. The last thing said to you every night of your childhood in a rhyme by somebody standing in a doorway with a hand on the light switch. Night, night, sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite. Some houses added, and if they do, hit them with a shoe. The bed bugs were once literal in older and poorer housing, within the memory of whoever taught it to your parents. Now, one worth knowing, because it is repeated more confidently than almost anything else in British nostalgia. You will have been told that sleep tight refers to rope beds, which had to be tightened before you got in. Michael Quinion looked properly and found no evidence at all. The Oxford English Dictionary records sleep tight only from 1933. And the earliest antedating is a diary line of 1866 reading "sleep tight and wake bright." By then, rope beds were long gone. Tight simply meant soundly, as in sit tight and hold tight. The bedbug half came later still. The shoe came later than that. Leaving the house needed something briefer. Number 49. Cheerio. Breezy, capable, and by the 70s, faintly of another era. It has proper dates. Cheerio appears in 1996 and Cheerio in 1918, built with the O ending that was everywhere in English around the First World War. It comes straight from cheer and not from the toast, whatever anybody says. Listen to who used it, and it places itself. The bank manager, the district nurse, the man reading the meter. Genial, slightly formal, and no teenager in Britain ever said it without meaning something by it. Which leaves one. The one you would have heard most if you grew up where I think you grew up. Number 50. Tara. That is it. 2 syllables, thrown over a shoulder, usually without turning round. Greens labels it British and mainly northern, and the citations spread it wider than people expect. A London novel in 1951. Silito in Nottingham in 1958, where a lad says "ta-ah, dad" to his father. Jack Rosenthal in 1975. Auf Wiedersehen, pet in 1986, with Tara for a bit. The parent form, Tata, is national and older, recorded from 1823. And Tara is not tar. Different word, different job. It carried an assumption inside it, that you would be back, that the door would be open when you were, and that nobody needed to make anything of it. Nobody announced that any of this was stopping. There was no last time that anybody noticed. The words simply came out of the house one at a time, over about 40 years, and mustn't grumble went with the rest of them. Somebody asked her how she was keeping in a queue out of politeness. Things were plainly not fine, and she was not going to say so. And everybody within earshot understood the rules she was following. You did not put your afternoon onto somebody else. Nobody took these words off us. Nobody banned them. They went the way words go, which is quietly, one household at a time, as the houses that needed them stopped existing. There is no use for a phrase about the tick book once there is no tick book, or for the penny in the lavatory door once the door swings open for nothing. The strange part is that we did not forget them. Ask anybody over 50 for the second half of waste not, and it arrives without a pause. The words are all still in there. We simply stopped saying them, which is a different sort of losing, and I am not certain it is the better sort, because it means the whole lot is sitting in a great many heads doing nothing at all. Mustn't grumble. 2 words that mean things are not all right, and I am not going to trouble you with it, and I would rather you did not ask me again. She would have thought all this was a great deal of fuss about nothing. Mustn't grumble.